welcome to your deep dive.
Yeah.
Today, we're stepping into, well, a passage that sparked, countless debates and interpretations over, like, millennia. Exodus chapter 6.
Yeah.
Now, whether you're, a devout believer or just dipping your toes into biblical waters, this chapter offers some seriously compelling food for thought
It really does.
on themes like redemption, faith, and even a bit of family drama that wouldn't feel out of place on a reality TV show.
Well, absolutely. What makes Exodus 6 so fascinating is that it doesn't just, tell a historical story, It grapples with questions we still ask today, like how do we deal with doubt when the odds are stacked against us? What does it even mean to have faith when we can't see the finish line?
Right. Okay, so picture this. The Israelites are stuck in Egypt, ruled by a pharaoh who is about as flexible as a brick wall.
Okay, yeah.
Things have gone from bad to worse, and right here in chapter 6, God steps in with a promise to Moses, deliverance is coming.
It's a huge moment.
But what's striking is that God allows this period of intense hardship.
Yeah.
It's like there's a deeper strategy at play here.
Exactly. It's as though God is saying, I see you, I hear your cries, but I'm also going to use this time to reveal my power in a way that leaves no room for doubt.
Wow.
It's about more than just rescuing them physically. It's about forging an unshakable faith in the midst of suffering.
That's a powerful thought, especially when we think about our own lives.
Yeah.
I mean, we often want the quick fix, right?
Yours, yeah.
The instant solution.
Instant gratification.
But sometimes it's those periods of stuckness where our faith is truly tested.
Yes.
And refined.
100%. And this is where we see a critical shift in how God presents himself, I think. In verses 2 and 3, God reveals two names to Moses. El Shaddai.
Okay.
And Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, which is often translated as, Yahweh or Jehovah. Now, the Israelites already knew the name El Shaddai, which means like God Almighty or God who is enough. It's a name that speaks to God's power as creator, provider, the one who sets things in motion.
So they had a foundational understanding of God's existence.
Right.
But what does this new name add to the equation?
Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh is different. It's a name that speaks to God's personal nature, his faithfulness through time. It literally means I am, W-H-O-I-M, suggesting an eternal, unchanging presence. This wasn't just about knowing of God. This was about knowing God, intimately, experiencing his faithfulness in a way that transcends circumstances.
That's incredible. It's like you're being invited into a whole new dimension of relationship with God.
Right.
One that goes beyond recognizing his existence to actually experiencing his presence in the midst of their struggles.
Yeah.
But, being human, they naturally have their doubts. And we see this in verse 9, even after hearing God's promises. The Israelites they're so beaten down they can barely even fathom freedom.
Wow.
Talk about relatable, right?
Absolutely. It's one thing to hear about a promise, right?
Yeah.
It's another to truly believe it when you're surrounded by evidence that seems to contradict it.
Right.
And this is where we see the insidiousness of Pharaoh's tactics, I think.
Right.
He doesn't just oppress them physically. He keeps piling on the work, knowing that exhaustion, busyness, it can be just as effective at crushing the spirit.
Oh, wow. That hits home. It's like how we can get so caught up in our to-do lists, our deadlines, the constant barrage of information that we lose sight of what truly matters.
Yeah.
We forget to nurture our own, spiritual freedom, that inner space where we connect with something bigger than ourselves.
It's a timeless tactic, really. Distract, overwhelm, keep people focused on the immediate so they don't have the energy to imagine a different reality. But here's the thing. God doesn't wait for the Israelites to get their act together before he acts. In verses 10 through 13, he instructs Moses to go back to Pharaoh and demand their release. And the way this command is phrased in the original Hebrew, it strongly suggests that Pharaoh's obedience is a foregone conclusion.
So it's like God is saying, this isn't up for debate. My people are coming out.
Exactly. It's a powerful reminder that God's plan, it doesn't hinge on our ability to convince others or even on our own, wavering faith. His power, it operates on a different level. But, and here's where it gets interesting, God also seems to understand the importance of establishing credibility.
Okay.
Especially in a world where doubt runs rampant.
It's like he's laying the groundwork for his case, so to speak.
Yeah, yeah.
Making it clear that Moses and Aaron aren't just, random guys showing up and making demands.
Exactly. And that's where the genealogy comes in.
Okay.
Now, I know genealogies might seem like, the driest part of the Bible, like who begat who and so on. But they served a crucial purpose in ancient Israelite culture.
Mm-hmm.
They're more than just family trees, right? They were statements of identity, authority, legitimacy.
So when we get to verses 14 through 27, this detailed lineage of Moses and Aaron going all the way back to Levi, the son of Jacob, it's not just filler content. It's God saying, pay attention. These guys have the credentials.
100%. They are descended from the tribe chosen for priestly service, the tribe responsible for mediating between God and the people.
Mm-hmm.
And notice how their ancestor Levi's lifespan is emphasized 137 years. Now, in the ancient world, longevity was often associated with divine blessing and wisdom.
Yeah.
It's like saying this family has a history of walking with God. They know what they're talking about.
Right. It adds a whole other layer of weight to their message. Okay, you have my attention. And then to really drive the point home, we see that Moses and Aaron are the fourth generation after Levi. Now, we know the Bible loves symbolism. So what's the significance of the number 4 here?
Well, in biblical numerology, 4 often represents the earth or the physical realm. So you could interpret this as God's plan for deliverance. It's extending beyond just the Israelites. It's not just about rescuing one nation. It's about establishing a pattern, a precedent that will ultimately impact the entire world.
Wow. That's quite the foreshadowing. But before we get too far ahead of ourselves, there's this little detail in verse 15 that caught my eye. It mentions one of the sons of Simeon, another of Jacob's sons, marrying a Canaanite woman. Now, this might seem kind of insignificant, but it actually speaks volumes about the cultural dynamics at play.
Absolutely. Marrying outside of your tribe, especially among the Israelites, was a big deal. It could even be seen as a betrayal of their covenant with God.
Wow.
This detail highlights the tension that existed between the Israelites and the Canaanites, who were often associated with idolatry.
Right. And remember, God had promised Abraham that his descendants would inherit the land of Canaan. So you've got this backdrop of cultural conflict, religious differences, and even family ties complicating the narrative.
Yeah.
It makes it all feel so much more human and relatable, don't you think?
I agree. It reminds us that these stories, they aren't just about, abstract theological concepts.
Right.
They're about real people, right? Making choices, navigating relationships, grappling with their faith in the messiness of everyday life.
Speaking of which, let's go back to Pharaoh. The chapter tells us that God told Moses and Aaron to tell Pharaoh to let the Israelites go division by division. But the original Hebrew word translated as division is actually closer to armies. What's the significance of that word choice?
It completely changes the tone, doesn't it?
It does.
Division by division sounds almost orderly, like a planned exodus.
Yeah.
But armies, that evokes images of conflict, power, even violence.
Mm-hmm.
It suggests that this liberation, it's not going to be easy or peaceful.
It's God is preparing them and us, the readers, for the reality that standing up for what's right, for freedom, it often comes with opposition.
Yeah.
It's not always going to be a walk in the park.
Exactly. It's a reminder that sometimes faith requires courage, the willingness to stand firm even when facing resistance.
Mm-hmm.
And it highlights a crucial theme in the Exodus story, the reality of spiritual warfare.
Which makes me think about Moses. Here he is, tasked with this monumental mission, talking directly to God. You'd think he'd be brimming with confidence.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, for sure.
But we see this beautiful moment of vulnerability in verses 28 through 30. Despite everything, Moses still expresses insecurity about his ability to lead.
It's incredibly relatable, isn't it? Even when we feel called by God, equipped for a specific purpose, doubt can still, creep in.
Yeah.
We question ourselves, our abilities, whether we're truly up to the task. It's comforting in a way, Even Moses, the man who parts seas and brings down commandments from a mountaintop, still has those moments of, can I really do this?
Totally.
It makes you realize that maybe our doubts aren't, necessarily a sign of weakness, but just part of what makes us human.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's what we do with those doubts, right?
Yeah.
Do we let them paralyze us, or do we bring them to God, allowing him to work through our imperfections?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And that's where we see the beauty of God's grace, right?
Mm.
He doesn't choose us because we have it all figured out. He chooses us because he knows our potential even when we don't see it ourselves.
And sometimes that means recognizing that we're not all called to lead in the same way.
Right.
There's this subtle but significant detail in this chapter that kind of highlights this. We see Moses and Aaron mentioned together like twice, but the order is reversed the second time. Initially it's Aaron and Moses, but later it shifts to Moses and Aaron. What's going on there? It's a brilliant example of how the biblical writers used like word order to convey a deeper meaning.
Okay.
You're right. At first, Aaron is listed first, which, makes sense. He's the older brother. But when it comes to the actual command to go before Pharaoh, the order flips.
Interesting. So it's not about diminishing Aaron's role, but more like clarifying who's taking the lead in this specific situation.
Exactly. Both brothers are essential to God's plan, but they have, different roles to play. Aaron, as the high priest, will be instrumental in, mediating with God, establishing religious rituals. But the role of leading the Israelites out of Egypt, that mantle of leadership, that falls on Moses.
Which kind of reinforces the idea that sometimes our calling is to step up and lead, and sometimes it's to, support and uplift others as they step into their calling.
Yeah.
And both are equally crucial, for God's plan to unfold.
It's a beautiful dance, really, the way God orchestrates our individual gifts and callings to work together for a greater purpose.
As we've journeyed through Exodus chapter 6, it's struck me how these ancient stories still resonate so deeply today.
Right.
I mean, we might not be facing like literal slavery in Egypt.
Yeah.
But we all have our own pharaohs, those obstacles, fears, or doubts that keep us from experiencing true freedom.
Absolutely. And just like the Israelites, we're invited into a relationship with a God who sees our struggles, hears our cries, and is like relentlessly committed to our liberation. But here's the thing. He doesn't just want to rescue us from something. He wants to rescue us for something.
That's a powerful distinction.
Yeah.
It's not just about escaping a bad situation. It's about like stepping into a greater purpose.
Right.
A life marked by faith,
Yeah.
freedom, and a deep awareness of God's presence. It's about recognizing that even in those moments when we feel inadequate, like Moses did, God can still use us in extraordinary ways if we're willing to just, say yes to his call.
And maybe, just maybe, our willingness to embrace our imperfections, our doubts, our need for God is what makes his power all the more evident.
This has been such an incredible deep dive. Who knew that a single chapter from the book of Exodus could hold like so much wisdom, so many layers of meaning that still speak to us today?
It's a testament to the enduring power of these ancient texts, isn't it? They invite us to wrestle with timeless questions, explore the complexities of faith, and discover how God's story intersects with our own.
So to our listeners, we leave you with this. What seemingly insignificant detail in your own life might hold a deeper meaning, a hidden message waiting to be uncovered? What challenge in your life might God be using to reveal his power and purpose in a way you'd never even imagined? Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.